There is a sermon most people have never heard. Not the dream, not the mountaintop. A quieter one, from a small southern pulpit, where Martin Luther King Jr. said something so precise and so unsettling that even his closest companions went home and could not sleep. He said the most dangerous moment in the life of a civilization is not when it collapses. It is when it gets comfortable. Comfort unchecked is not a blessing. It is an anesthetic. A people put to sleep by their own abundance can be conquered without a shot. He said this in the 1960s, defined by fire hoses and freedom marches. And even then, in the middle of the most visible moral crisis of the century, he was already warning about the next one, the invisible one, the one nobody would feel. That warning did not make the history books. It was not carved into marble because it was too personal. It looked not at the systems oppressing people from the outside, but at the habits slowly hollowing people out from within. This is the story of that warning. And the reason it matters right now, in the particular life you're living, is that everything he described has arrived. Not with a bang, exactly as he predicted, with the quiet hum of a screen lighting up in a dark room. Consider what your morning looks like. Before you have sat with your own thoughts for 60 seconds, you have already handed your attention to a device engineered to keep it. You did not choose that. It happened, and it happens again tomorrow. King had a name for this mechanism. He called it the tranquilization of the soul. The most effective prison ever built is the one a person builds around themselves, one comfortable habit at a time, until the walls no longer register as walls at all. Martin Luther King Jr. grew up in a country that would not allow his father to try on shoes without proof they would fit, because a black man sitting while a white salesman knelt before him was considered a disruption to the natural order. That was the world that shaped him. Not the marble world, the actual world. The man who emerged from it became a physician of the human conscience, capable of diagnosing not just wounds inflicted from outside, but the ones people choose to inflict upon themselves. What he saw decades before the algorithm existed was the vulnerability that makes the comfortable trap possible. That people, given the choice between a grand life and a small and easy one, will choose the small and easy one, because the systems around them reward it. He called this the greatest threat to human dignity that had no enemy to march against. You cannot organize a protest against your own inertia. You cannot shame the comfortable trap into releasing you. It does not look like a trap. It looks like rest. Think about the last time you felt genuinely alive. Not entertained, alive. The last time a day ended and you went to sleep knowing something real had been built. If you have to reach back further than a week, what King warned about is already operating in your life. In 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. accepted the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo. He was 35 years old. He stood before an international audience and said something universally misheard. People were listening for the triumph. What he delivered, in a calm voice, was the warning. He said the real test of a civilization is not what it builds on the outside, but what it cultivates on the inside. Whether people examine their own lives, whether they treat the interior as a serious place, or let it drift, unexamined, toward ease. In the years after Oslo, as the victories accumulated and the nation began implementing what the marches had forced into law, King began to see something in the people around him that troubled him more than any police baton ever had. He saw relief. He saw moderates who had watched the marches from a comfortable distance and were now, with the legislation passed, settling back into that distance with a clear conscience. He saw a culture developing a genius for performing moral seriousness without enacting transformation. He gave this phenomenon a name. He called it the comfortable trap, and he said it was a spiritual emergency, because a person who has traded their highest calling for the management of their own convenience has violated something fundamental in what a human being is for. King was asserting that human beings are not designed for comfort as an end state. We are designed for contribution, for the friction of a meaningful struggle, for the quality of aliveness that only comes when you are doing something genuinely difficult in service of something important. He wrote that the great danger was not that freedom would be taken away, but that it would be squandered. That people who had marched and been jailed would, upon arriving at safety, simply rest, and the rest would become a ceiling. The comfortable trap of 1967 was relatively visible. The suburban house, the new car, the careful avoidance of anything that might disturb the pleasant surface of a middle-class life. Recognizable as a trap, even from inside it, if you were willing to look. The comfortable trap of today is invisible. It arrives not as a withdrawal from life, but as an acceleration into a simulation of it. You are never bored, never truly still, in constant contact with content calibrated to produce the sensation of engagement without the cost of commitment. King named this mechanism without naming the technology. He said the enemy of human greatness is not hostility, which can be organized against and marched past. The enemy is the warm, frictionless, reliably pleasant experience of not being asked for anything real. If what you have heard has touched something real in you, if the description of the comfortable trap has produced a tightening in the chest, you are exactly the kind of person this channel was built for. The person who suspects there is a version of themselves they have not fully inhabited. Like this video, subscribe right now. Not for the numbers, for the declaration it represents. Declarations, made at the right moment, change the trajectory of what follows. The comfortable trap counts on you moving past this moment without deciding. Stay with the story. King did not just diagnose the comfortable trap, he prescribed a way out of it. Scattered across sermons and letters, he left behind 3 principles, each one a direct challenge to the mechanism he had identified. The first is the most countercultural thing he ever said. The first principle: discomfort is not the enemy of the good life. It is the price of admission. King said from his church in Atlanta that every human being is called to a life of creative tension between who you are and who you are capable of becoming. He said that everyone who had moved something real in the direction of justice did so not by eliminating that tension, but by learning to live inside it, treating the discomfort of an unfinished life not as a problem to be solved, but as evidence of conscience still alive. In practice, this looks like choosing the harder conversation over the diplomatic silence. Starting the project you have been circling, not because you feel ready, but because the not starting has begun to cost you something you can clearly feel. The second principle: your highest calling is not a personal achievement. It is a contribution. King believed the self was not designed to be its own primary beneficiary, that orienting a life around personal gain and comfort would produce a prosperity that felt, from the inside, like poverty. He called this the drum major instinct gone wrong. The desire to lead, to be first, to matter, is hardwired into every person alive. This instinct was not itself wrong. The question is what you pointed at. The people who had found genuine peace, not the managed peace of a comfortable life, but the deep peace of a purpose that survives your bad days, had aimed the drum major instinct at something larger than personal survival, a truth capable of sustaining a life through all the storms that come. This is not an instruction to abandon ambition. It is an instruction to audit it, to ask not whether your goal is achievable, but whether achieving it will matter to anyone other than you, whether the version of yourself you are building makes anything better. This is the question the comfortable trap is designed to prevent you from asking, because once you ask it honestly, the trap becomes visible, and a visible trap is a trap you can choose to leave. The third principle: redemptive love is not a feeling, it is a practice. King drew from the Greek concept of agape, the love that does not depend on the lovability of its object, the love that chooses to act not because it feels good, but because it is right. He said this kind of love is a discipline before it is a feeling. You do not wait to feel it in order to practice it. You practice it in the small daily decisions nobody sees, and in time, the practice reshapes the feeling. When was the last time you did something that scared you productively? The fear of genuine exposure, putting something that matters to you into the world where it can be judged, where it can fail, where the gap between who you are and who you could be is suddenly visible. When was the last time you made a decision because it was right rather than convenient? When did you last commit to something with your actual time and your actual presence, not just a like or a share? These are not rhetorical questions, they are diagnostic ones. Because King's warning was never primarily about the outside world. This warning was always about the inside one, about whether the person looking out through your eyes is fully inhabiting their own existence, or whether they have gradually handed the steering wheel to whatever is easiest. The comfortable trap does not announce itself. It is assembled, one small capitulation at a time, until those small choices have produced a life nobody deliberately chose. A life that is not bad in the way poverty is bad, but a life that is, in King's precise sense, unlived. An unlived life is not a neutral choice. Every person who retreats into the comfortable trap takes with them gifts and forms of love the world needed. The person you do not become is a loss to every person who would have been different. That is the moral weight King placed on the decision to remain comfortable. Not guilt, weight. The weight of understanding that your life is not only yours, and that the quality of your engagement with your own potential is, in a deep and non-negotiable sense, a matter of justice. So how do you leave the trap? King's answer was always both simple and costly. Find the thing that is worth more to you than your comfort, and begin. Not plan to begin. Begin. Today, in the particular life you have, toward the contribution only you are positioned to make. King began his public life by agreeing to lead a boycott he had not planned for. He was 26 years old, with a newborn daughter and a church to run. He was by every measure not ready. There is a particular kind of silence that falls in a room when something true has been said. Not the silence of agreement, the silence of recognition. The moment a person hears something they already knew, stated so precisely that the knowing can no longer be ignored. King spent his adult life producing that silence, not because he had access to truths nobody else possessed, but because he was willing to say them in a voice that refused to soften them. Truth stated comfortably is almost always heard comfortably, which is to say, set aside. So here is the truth, stated with full weight. You were not placed here to manage your own comfort. You were placed here to contribute something that would not exist without you. To love people in ways that cost you something real. To make your life a genuine gift. Every system in the modern environment is designed to prevent you from doing this. Not through malice, through the optimization of your preferences. You are being given, at every moment, exactly what you have previously chosen, which means the system is perfecting a life of beautifully managed minimum friction. King saw that moment coming. He warned that the generation after the marches would face a challenge more subtle than anything the marching had prepared them for. Not in the street. Something that would meet them in their own living rooms, and 1,000 small choices made toward ease. He said the only answer was the decision, made by a single person in the privacy of their own conscience, to no longer accept less of themselves than their potential demands. That decision, replicated across millions of lives, is what a movement looks like from the inside. King made that decision every morning. When the marching had been replaced by harder, slower, less photogenic work, he made it in conditions of isolation and exhaustion most people never encounter. Because the life organized around a purpose is the only life that does not shrink under pressure. Every other life contracts in the presence of difficulty, but the life given over to something beyond itself, to a truth that transcends personal survival, expands under pressure. It becomes more, not less, of what it was always meant to be. That was what King was living in his final years. The comfortable trap offers you one thing and takes away another. It offers ease and takes from you the aliveness that only comes when you are genuinely at stake in something that matters. When you are not watching a life unfold on a screen, but living one in the first person. King called the alternative the beloved community. Not an abstraction, not a distant utopia. A quality of engagement with the world around you that transforms the ordinary into the sacred, that makes of every day a small act of the justice he spent his life pursuing. You clicked because something in you already knew, already felt the distance between the life you were living and the life you are capable of. The comfortable trap has been showing itself for longer than you want to admit. The part of you that has not given up wanted to hear it named. It has been named. The only question remaining is the one King left at the door of every sermon he gave. The question addressed to anyone willing to hear it with honesty and carry it forward with courage. What are you going to do with the time you have left? Not the time in a philosophical sense, the time today. The conversations you could have, the work you could begin, the person you could choose to be before the sun goes down. In the ordinary, unremarkable, infinitely valuable hours of a life still fully yours. King did not ask the people he addressed to be extraordinary. He asked them to be honest, to look with clear eyes at the distance between who they were and who they were capable of being, and to begin from exactly where they stood to close it. Not tomorrow, now. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a monument. He was a man who made daily decisions so consistently oriented towards something larger than himself that the accumulated weight of those decisions became something history could not ignore. He was afraid. He had a safety he could have chosen. He chose the harder thing every day, not with certainty, with conviction. The arc bends because people decide to bend it, one decision at a time, one honest morning at a time, one conversation chosen by conviction at a time. Subscribe to this channel, not as a passive reflex, as the first move of the person you are choosing to be, as a declaration that the comfortable trap, now visible to you, will not close quietly again while you are paying attention. Paying attention is the first act of resistance. Martin Luther King Jr. was 39 years old when he died. In less than 15 years, he moved something so fundamental in the moral structure of his nation that it is still felt 6 decades later, in the laws, in the language, in the quality of moral seriousness that still carries the echo of his cadence. He did all of that inside a comfortable trap that never stopped offering itself. He was offered safety and chose exposure, offered silence, he chose speech. He chose the offered life over the managed one, given over to something larger than itself, and therefore larger than any comfortable life. That is the inheritance he left. To every person who has felt the distance between who they are and who they could be, and has not given up on closing it. Subscribe to this channel. Every video here is built to bring that inheritance close enough to act on. The arc bends when someone pulls. That someone is you.